Let's look at wide receivers 31 through 40. Amari Cooper now.
I'll tell you, I thought this shirt, at the time when I put it on this morning, very early this morning, I thought it was going to look good, but I'm on TV now, and I don't think it does. And it's my fault. I just want to be clear about this. This is not Stephanie's fault. This
Kev was trying to help
me.
you in between segments.
I know he was.
There's
Poor
no
Kevin.
helping you.
There's no helping me.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
applaud the effort, but
it's not a good look.
So you're third out of the three of us today for sure.
I would agree with that.
Today?
I would agree with that, right?
Yeah,
I think
most
it's, by the way, I think I'm a distant third, to be honest with you. All right, let's go back to whatever we were talking about.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Jay Croucher here with Matthew Berry in a new shirt. We'll get your thoughts on that in a second, Matthew.
Yeah.
And Lawrence, Bobby Valentine Jackson. Got the glasses today, the mustache.
Who's Bobby Valentine?
The manager of the Met. You get my reference.
Yes,
right?
I do. Yeah.
I heard a Bobby Valentino R&B singer, but that's about it for me.
Is this the new look for this season?
Well, the only thing that's different is my mustache. I see all these NFL players, in the preseason with their little mustache. Well, I'm just growing mine out to show y'all whose mustache is boss.
Is that, should I take that as a sign of aggression towards me, as you just showing me that you can grow hair when you want to because I am follically challenged?
Well, see, if I was gonna do that, Matthew, I would go from the top with it. I still got it going at the top.
would you?
See, I ain't gonna do you like that. That's why I wear the hat. So we just go with the facial hair.
I
here.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. All right.
Clothes look better today, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Well, I let Stephanie take over again. You know what I mean?
Good.
We drove for an exit, and then I was just like, you know what? I'm going to pull over to the side of the road. Stephanie, you take the wheel. And so, yeah, we're back. So anyway, thank you again to Stephanie. You were on vacation with your family.
Yeah, out
We
there.
missed you.
Appreciate it, man. I was out there in Orlando, Disney, hustling. Going to Disney for 5 days is like harder than an actual job.
Yeah.
You get up the next day, you're a little bit sore here and there from all the walking, all that stuff. But hey, good time. It's for the kids. We love it.
Yeah.
Probably should have gone to Universal Studios. But
I did. I went there.
Did
you
you?
know I'm using that free NBC pass for that. Yeah.
That's good.
I went to the NBC Sports Beer Grill, got me a little discount. I'm taking advantage if I'm down there. Yes,
All
sir.
right. There you go.
I haven't conquered Disney yet with my 3 daughters, but it's coming. But
Good luck
for
with
now,
Well, where you went somewhere? You went to an amusement park past
to
week?
Playland.
To
Playland in
Playland.
Rye, New York, which was on a hot day with kids 6, 3, and 2. It was a long day, but that's okay.
I have no
Anyway,
doubt.
Haven't conquered Disney yet. We're going to try conquer running backs
Yes.
today, continuing
sir.
our positional preview. Be sure to check out wide receivers from yesterday's show, tight ends from the day before. But today it is all about running backs, and that is why Denny Carter, the running back hero himself, he drinks free today because it was his birthday yesterday, which we forgot about yesterday.
And by we, I want to be clear about this, Denny. I want to be clear about this. By we really mean backup producer Pete. Backup producer Pete, who honestly, he produced yesterday, and he's just like, Denny Schmenny. Like, just so you understand that when backup producer Pete is putting together the show, Denny Carter, you are nowhere near his thoughts at any point. Hey, maybe we should try to get Lawrence in today. Hey, I want to feature Connor. Hey, I wonder what Rotopat's doing. But just he never, ever considers you, Denny,
Man.
just so you know. Hey, we got to make sure Lawrence is around. Like, just so you understand. But we all, the collective 3 here, along with Connor Rogers, we were like, why didn't we wish Denny a happy birthday? So, again, our friend and colleague, Denny Carter.
Happy birthday, Denny.
Happy birthday,
Denny Carter.
Yes.
60 years old today.
Nah, 61.
61?
With the hair of a 16-year-old boy.
The hair of a I'm
matters
insanely jealous of it.
in the end. All right, let's get into running backs.
backs.
Matthew, let's talk about strategy first,
Sure.
just broadly. How do you feel about zero RB, hero, anchor RB? What do you think about running backs this year?
Well, let's just sort of define that, just in case people
Right.
these terms get bandied about a lot online, on Twitter, and that kind of stuff. And some people may be like, "Oh, sure, I know what that means," or maybe I don't. But just so you understand, if we're talking about it, this is how we're defining this well, very clearly. Zero RB is not that you don't draft any running backs. What it means is that you don't draft any running backs in the first 5 to 7 rounds. Okay? But the important thing is that if you go with this approach, obviously you have to crush a wide receiver, but you're also going to get an elite quarterback and elite tight end. Basically, you're saying I'm going to get elite at every position, and then rounds rounds 8, 9, 10, that kind of thing, I'm going to target cheap volume at running back, the Najee Harrises of the world, the Devin Singletaries, Brian Robinson, those type of players, along with high insurance backs, and you hope that some of them pop, that you find a Kyren Williams, that kind of stuff, and that you hope that maybe that suddenly Tank Bigsby or Jordan Mason or somebody like that pops at some point during the year, right? So that's the idea behind zero RB. Another phrase that gets thrown out a lot is hero RB or anchor RB. That's exactly what it says. Like basically you're drafting one high-end running back early, and then you're ignoring the position for 4 or 5 rounds. So this year that would be like you draft McCaffrey, and then it's wide receiver. So Breece Hall, Bijan, those kind of things. For me, I wouldn't want to do I think the lowest tier I would want, I think you could do anchor RB, and we'll get into this, but I think you can do anchor RB with Derrick Henry, with Saquon, with JT, with Pacheco. I'd be a little nervous to do it with Williams and Achane based on injury history there, but that's the idea there, is that you get an elite running back and then you ignore the position for the next 4 to 6 rounds. And again, then for your RB2, you're looking sort of in that same range of those cheap volume guys that we talked about. And then the last strategy here, very quickly, is heavy RB or bully RB, sometimes people call it. And that's where you're going running back, sometimes running back there. And once you do that, so you're maybe if you're at the end of the first round, and I've seen, Bijan draft sometimes, you go Bijan and then you go Barkley in the second round. Right? And at the end of the third, I don't know, maybe there's a
Travis Etienne.
Yeah, that's probably too late for Etienne, but is there is there somebody
maybe like a Swift as
your
third running back?
I feel like that's too early for Swift as well, but whatever. There's like an Achane or somebody like Achane. That would probably be too late for Achane, but whatever. Kenneth Walker, that'd be a good example, right? Kenneth Walker, Kamara, somebody towards the end of the third round, whatever. You go running back is the point, and then you basically ignore the position until the kind of late rounds, and you're taking some flyers. But basically, you're locking up your running back position at the very early point. What I would say here, just in general, and then we're going to get into specific positions, but what I would say here in general is that I wouldn't want to go into a draft saying, well, I'm definitely doing zero RB, I'm definitely doing hero RB, or I'm going RB. Again, wait to see what your draft pick is. Wait to see how the draft comes to you. I've seen some drafts on ESPN where the first 3 picks are McCaffrey, Breece, and Bijan, right? Or 3 of the first 5, or the very running back heavy on ESPN. And then I've seen other leagues, especially on Yahoo, where Bijan or Breece will last till the end of the first round, where it's more wide receiver heavy. So again, every league is different. So I kind of want to go in the league, let the draft come to me, and sort of figure it out. But what I will say here is that if you decide I'm going zero RB, and that's just great wide receiver value, and then you suddenly find yourself in round 6, and you're like, wow, I hate all the running backs in this round, and there's still some really good values at wide receiver. Too bad. You're sort of you're kind of pot committed at that point. The only thing you can do, at that point, you're sort of pot committed to this strategy, and you can't suddenly draft and wait wait too long. The only thing you can do there, Lawrence, is if you know your league, if you're in a league with people that you're friends with or that you have a relationship with, and you're like, okay, you know what, I know I'm going to be able to trade. So if you're just like, oh, the value is still, I've gone zero RB, but the value is still better at wide receiver or tight end, I'm just going to load up on that, because then what I can do is I can take my number 2 wide receiver or number 3 wide receiver and trade it for a stud running back, as opposed to reaching it, because I now have all this incredible depth at wide receiver because the value kept being there. But that only works, again, if you know you're going to be able to trade in your league. If you're in a high-stakes league, or a league where you don't have great relationships or know the people, then you got to sort of stick with whatever strategy you committed to.
Yep, indeed. All right, let's get into the tiers. Start off with tier 1, headlines by Christian McCaffrey. No surprise there. Just 3 guys in this tier. McCaffrey, Breece Hall is your RB2, Matthew, and then Bijan Robinson is RB3. Let's start off with Christian McCaffrey. And first of all, we haven't seen a lot of Christian McCaffrey in the preseason, but Kyle Shanahan does not seem too concerned.
Yeah.
That's what's good when you're that obsessive about everything. I mean, when you're hurt, you can't go. But when you take every rep, every walkthrough, everything you do, you're just so deliberate in everything. When he's probably walking down the aisle to get married, he's probably thinking about his feet and how to do routes. No offense to Olivia, but he's obsessed with it. And so when you do get in these situations where you do get hurt and you can't go do all that stuff, at least he's put the work in before.
Tough break for Olivia, but good news for Niners fans that Christian McCaffrey is thinking about his routes as he's walking down the aisle. Do you think that Christian McCaffrey, Lawrence, is just the clear 101?
Clear cut as in, like, this is the only person you should draft in a fantasy league? I wouldn't say that. He's the consensus number one. I've had number one, and I've taken him number one. But I've also had a second pick and taken Breece Hall. So if you're in a full PPR league, I wouldn't be mad at you if you took CeeDee Lamb, especially now that you got his contract. I would be mad if you took Tyreek Hill because, listen, both of these guys were within 1 point of Christian McCaffrey on a points per game basis last year for fantasy. So if it's those guys and maybe Breece Hall, then we have a conversation. But if you're going into half PPR, if you still play standard, yeah, I'm taking Christian McCaffrey number one in that situation.
Matthew, do you think there's a case to take Breece Hall over McCaffrey with the first pick?
I think there's a case. It's not one that I would make, but you could always make a case, which is just that, right? You know, McCaffrey has been injured throughout this preseason. He has, prior to this, you know, like there were 2 years where he basically was unusable in fantasy. Now, he's been great the last 2 years. He's been great ever since he came to San Francisco. But there were 2 years where, again, similar situation. He was the number one player drafted in fantasy, or a very high draft pick in fantasy, and he missed much of the years. So Breece Hall, you know, younger in theory, not as much of an injury risk, although it's crazy to think about that because obviously, you know, 2 years ago he had the big injury as well. But so I think you can make a case for Breece Hall, but to me, the better case is that if you're not going McCaffrey at 101, then you're going CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill. Like you're going just a different position. But it feels like if you're going Chris McCaffrey. I will say this though, I just interest for whatever it's worth. I'm in a guillotine league, and this is an 18-person guillotine league, not ours, a different one. 18-person guillotine league, and the team at number one picked Breece Hall over Chris McCaffrey. So I could sort of see that just because it's a guillotine league, and maybe you feel like, and again, it's going to be 36 picks before you, so you maybe feel like there's maybe a slightly higher floor or safety to Breece Hall because of this. We've seen McCaffrey miss the entire preseason, but I don't know. Every time I've had the 101, I've been taking Chris McCaffrey.
Yep. I think the concerns about McCaffrey would be last year his stats were a little bit dependent on these long, explosive runs, which are not as projectable going forward. Also, he was healthy for the full season until basically the final week, which he missed. The Niners were awesome last year and were constantly in positive game script. Just in general, you know, project them to, on average, be the number one seed again. So there's a little bit with McCaffrey, and then there's the injuries. And, well, by the way, not just the injuries, but this is, I think, an underreported story. Like, so much has been made about CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Ayuk, Jamar Chase's holdout. Trent Williams is holding out here, and they are a different team with Trent Williams on the offensive line. You know, and take it from somebody that, you know, went through, like, Trent Williams is one of those guys, like, take it from a Commanders fan. Like, Trent ain't bluffing. No. You know what I mean? Like, that's a guy who wants his money. Trent wants his money. And by the way, if you look at the numbers of Brock Purdy, I know this is a running back show, but if you look at Brock Purdy's numbers with and without Trent Williams, they are stark. There's a very big difference. So hopefully that gets figured out and Trent gets back into camp. But that is something that I would say, no, McCaffrey is such an asset in the passing game, and Shanahan is such a creative play caller that I think even if Trent Williams isn't there, they will scheme different ways to get him the ball. But I'm just saying, like, again, if you want to make the Breece Hall case, that's another thing that you could add to that case is that, like, again, they're missing their, you know, one of the best left tackles in football history. Yep. Lawrence, let's jump to Breece Hall, who, I mean, last time we saw him, he was getting like 37 carries against the Patriots in Week 18. Seems like he is primed for workhorse usage behind an improved offensive line in New York, and also what should just be an exponentially improved offense with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, that's why it makes what he did last year all the more impressive, because he was doing it with that version of the Jets offensive line. And you spoke on Week 18 during the fantasy fantasy playoffs from weeks 14 to the end of the season. He was the best running back in fantasy at 25 fantasy points per game in that span. So the whole season, he's RB2, right, in points per game. Again, with that version of the Jets O-line, how high would I take him? I just said it earlier. I've taken him with the second spot because I know if I don't have a chance to get him back. If you're at the number 2, 3, 4 spot and you want that top tier level running back, you have to get him at that point. Or you run the risk of letting someone else get him at 9 or 10. That team's going to be good. If your team getting Breece Hall at the 9th or 10th pick in your fantasy draft, that's going to be a pretty solid team. So I would take him as high as 2, and that's exactly what I've done.
Yeah, I don't think there's much more I can add to how good Breece Hall is. Better offensive line, better offense, longer sustained drives, and oh, by the way, Rodgers wanted to protect Rodgers. They're going to want to be more balanced on offense as well. I think the better question is what about Breece Hall versus Bijan Robinson? I've seen that debate, right? And it's razor thin. They're both awesome. They're both going to have monster years. I guess, to me, the argument for Breece Hall over Bijan Robinson, this is why I did this. Like, at this level, you have to sort of, you have to nitpick a little bit. And I guess I feel better about the backfield that Breece Hall's in, where I'm not worried about, Braylon Allen's going to get a little bit of work, but whatever, versus Tyler Algier, who we continue to see, like, Tyler Algier's good. He's not Bijan Robinson, but Tyler Algier is good. And the reports out of camp is that they do want to use Tyler Algier some. Bijan Robinson's still going to get a ton of work. He's still obviously going to be active in the passing game. But when you think about the Falcons, they've got Bijan Robinson and Tyler. I feel better about the talent of Tyler Algier and the competition. Better meaning worse. Like, I think Tyler Algier is a higher level of competition for Bijan than Braylon Allen is for Breece Hall or Jordan Mason is for Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because, there's so much going on here. First, Tyler Algier was awesome. His rookie season wasn't as good last year, though.
Right.
He was sub 4.0 yards per carry. Last year, Bijan Robinson, who quietly had like almost 1,500 scrimmage yards, 8 touchdowns. He was fine overall. He just didn't live up to expectations. But last year, Bijan, when you factor in Cordarrelle Patterson's carries as well, he got less than 50% of the Falcons' running back carries, which is just, I think, insane. And I think
we should fire Arthur Smith again. Can we just go back in time and fire him again?
Well, he might get a new chance to get fired based on how the Steelers have looked in preseason. But I think the thing with Bijan is that there are just so many kind of institutional pressures that are going to push him towards more workhorse status where, like, the Raheem Morris is coming. You think he's not going to use Bijan Robinson? You really think he's not going to use Bijan Robinson?
He already said it. He's like, our plan is to get our best player of the ball. Yeah. In fact, speaking of Arthur Smith.
Which is smart. I call the Josie offense.
That is smart, Matthew. And speaking of Arthur Smith, Bijan's first 9 games last season, 16 touches a game. His last 8 went up to 19.5 touches per game. Unfortunately for Arthur Smith, he waited too late to do that. So, now Raheem Morris comes in. He's like, you know what? I'm not going to play around like that. I'm going to get this young man the ball who's doing behind-the-back catches and stuff like that. I'm going to get him the ball. So, yes, Tyler Algier will have a role and should, quite frankly, have a role as the change-of-pace running back. But if you're going to get Bijan Robinson 19 touches per game, that is enough for him to pay off he's getting drafted.
We love Bijan this year. Again, he's going to have a monster year. The question is just Breece versus Bijan. Where do you have him ranked?
I have Bijan as RB3.
Okay, same thing. We're both
Breece
saying
Breece is definitely the number. I feel like he closer to CMC to me than Bijan would be to Breece because of the point you made about the competition that they'll have in their respective backfields.
They're all 3 guys are tier 1 running backs. All 3 guys are first rounders this year. It's just, to me, that's the debate. I think most people agree Christian McCaffrey won. Then it's Breece versus Bijan for RB2. And we're both Breece slightly over Bijan because, again, slightly less competition for Breece in the backfield there.
Yep. All right, let's jump into tier 2. Headlined by Saquon Barkley, now a Philadelphia Eagle. He comes in at 6th on your list, Matthew. We'll get to him. Just in front of him, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs, Derrick Henry on the other side of Barkley, and then Isaiah Pacheco, Kyren Williams, Travis Etienne Jr. coming off a massive workload in Jacksonville last year, and then Devin Achane, who is maybe the highest variance running back on the board. But let's start off, Matthew, with Saquon. I think there is some uncertainty here, and it mainly revolves around, is he going to get goal line work for a team that obviously loves the tush push? And also, is he going to get receiving work, which Philadelphia running backs historically have not had with Jalen Hurts?
And that's the concern, right? Since Jalen Hurts became the starter, the Eagles are 28th in the NFL in running back targets, right? Think about DeAndre Swift. Last year, DeAndre Swift, who comes there, like, that was his whole game prior to he went to Philadelphia, was he was this great pass-catching running back out of the backfield. He had a career low target share last year. Now they ended up using him. You know, he got a huge workload. And the other argument is he's Saquon Barkley. He ain't DeAndre Swift, right? He's not some of the other guys they've had there. But yes, that is a concern. Jalen Hurts, throughout his career as a starter in Philadelphia, has not shown a propensity to dump it off to the running back. And so, if Saquon's not getting a big target share, like, he'll get some because he's Saquon and they're paying him a lot of money for a reason. But just that's the concern, is that does his passing game production go down a little bit, and then there's concerns to me about his touchdown equity again, because even if Hurts doesn't run it as much as he did previously last year, and again, and no Jason Kelce on the offensive line, that's going to hurt a little bit, but you don't. It's a slight concern. All that said, it's a better offense and it's a better offensive line.
Right, he's going to have more opportunities. While the receptions are concerned, he'll have more opportunities to score the football. Look at this number right here. DeAndre Swift had 14 carries inside the 5 last season. That was 11th in the league. Saquon only had 6 carries inside the 5 last season, which was 33rd, and that's just being on the Giants offense. If you go to Saquon's year before that, when the Giants made it to the playoffs, right, Saquon had his best year since his rookie year. He had 15 carries inside the 5 and scored 7 touchdowns like that. I expect that number to go up. So while the receptions may go down a little bit, he'll have more opportunities near the goal line.
Yeah, with Saquon, my concern would be, and this is from Jacob Gibbs on Twitter, in terms of the past 3 seasons, just his tackle avoidance percentage, he's been at 12.9%. The NFL league average has been 18.4%. Saquon's in the same range as guys like Jamal Williams and Rashad White and A.J. Dillon. Like, I'm just worried that he is not the same guy physically that he was when he came out as a generational running back prospect. So obviously the environment changes. He's going to be more efficient just with the Eagles' O-line and just the offense in general. But I think there is a little bit of concerns with his age, injury history, that he might not be the guy that everyone expects.
That's why he's in tier 2. And you sort of look at the tier 2, and that's why I sort of like going with either one of those first-round running backs or waiting a little bit here as well, right? So you think about Kyren Williams, right? So we like Kyren Williams, right? But there's concerns about injury, right? This is somebody who has missed 5 games each of his at least 5 games each of his years in the pros, and now there's this weird stuff, Lawrence. Like, he's going to be returning punts.
Yeah.
Do you see that from McVay?
And that sent people online into a frenzy.
Right.
All of a sudden, he goes from Kyren Williams to people to Darren Sproles. Like, now that's what they see. But your former colleague, Mike Clay, over there at ESPN, tweeted something that actually made sense. Because a lot of people are like, oh, man, I can't draft Kyren Williams now. Yes, you can. This is what Mike Clay said. Kyren Williams handled 100% of the Rams' punt returns last season, weeks 1 through 3. In that span, he played 86% of the offensive snaps. Do we like that? I think we do. He saw 19 targets and had 39 carries in that span. Then he took over. Only one of those games, Cam Akers had the game where he went 22 carries, 29 yards.
Yeah.
After that, it was all Kyren Williams, right? So he's still returning punts. This is what a lot of people don't understand. Fantasy aside, punt returning, you got to trust the guy you put back there.
Sure.
Do I expect Kyren Williams to return every punt this season? No. Absolutely not. He may start out, returning the punts, and they'll be like, all right, we found somebody, you're back to Kyren Williams. Also, too, He averaged 21.3 fantasy points per game last year. No one else as a running back had more than 18. So just take that into consideration. Remember, we're not drafting him like a top 3 to 5 running back like he was last season. So we kind of already have the Blake Corum role baked into that.
Yep.
So what's 60? If he gets 65% of the snaps, like, we cool with that.
The positives of the punt return thing is that obviously McVay is not worried about any health concerns. That's one of the big knocks on Kyren Williams. And maybe they think that, they're going to get some quality snaps from Blake Corum. So, okay, if Kyren Williams has to take a handful of snaps to return punts, okay, that's fine because we've got Corum to handle that, to take on a little larger workload here. But that's why Kyren Williams, despite last year, despite the massive success, the massive workload, that's why Kyren Williams is in Tier 2 as opposed to Tier 1 because just based on the production last year and the expected role this year, he would still be Tier 1. But that's why he's there. And then the next guy in Tier 2, I don't know if we're going to
Let's jump to Devin Achane, who is, I think, Matthew, the skill position player with maybe the widest range of outcomes this season of anyone. Where if Raheem Mostert gets hurt and Devin Achane assumes closer to bell cow responsibility, he could be the #1 running back in fantasy. Like, that's a viable outcome, and he could also just be in a timeshare and not be particularly enjoyable to manage in fantasy. So where do you sit on Devin Achane?
Look, I'm in on Devin Achane. I'm actually in on both Dolphins running backs at cost. Like, to your right, like, what are we doing? Playing for second? You're right. There's a wider range of outcomes with Devin Achane than there are with some of the other running backs. But number 1 running back in fantasy is well within the range of outcomes for him, as you pointed out. He's also somebody that can individually win you a week. Yep. We saw that last year multiple times, and so getting rid of there are health concerns. And if we knew for a fact, if Mike McDaniel came out and said, by the way, I'm guaranteeing you guys 17 touches a game for Devin Achane, he's going as a top 4 running back, right? I mean, he's got, he might, right? I mean, he's right up there. So the problem is we just don't know, is it going to be 10 touches a game, 12 touches a game, or could it be 17 to 19? We just don't know that. This is somebody, I will say, Achane is somebody who did get a decent workload at Texas A&M in the SEC. And if you go back and watch the film, this is somebody that used to, it wasn't just all sweeps. Like, they would run him off tackle. They would run him between the lines. So, he's a tougher guy than you think. And so I'm in on Achane in a big way. I just think elite talent, and we saw it on display in flashes last year. Going to take another step this year.
And just real quick, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Braxton Berrios, and Malik Washington. Those are the 4 active receivers on the Dolphins right now. The other guys are hurt right now, but 3.5 targets per season last year. They've already experimented with putting Devin Achane out wide, so they will use him in that way as well.
Yep. All right, let's jump into running backs Tier 3. Some of the big names on this list. Joe Mixon, running back 12 overall. He's just in front of James Cook, Josh Jacobs, now Green Bay Packer, Rashad White and Alvin Kamara. I think it's poetic that they are side by side. A couple of PPR merchants, and then Kenneth Walker. Then my man, much forgotten James Conner, who we'll get into in a second. But let's start off, Matthew, with Alvin Kamara. Will the PPR scam continue in 2024?
I think it will. I mean, I think what's really interesting about Tier 3 is you've got, for the most part, a lot of guys that may not be the, quote, sexiest name, but all have really big volume opportunities here. With Alvin Kamara, Kendra Miller is going to start on the physically unable to perform list. And, I don't know, if you can read between the lines, I feel like Dennis Allen hates Kendra Miller.
Really,
with a fiery passion.
Damn near said it.
I mean, right?
He about to say I hate. He almost said I hate him. I felt like he was about to say that. He was just sure to say that.
I mean, I feel like, Dennis Allen is just. Anyway, it's not going well for Kendra Miller in New Orleans, and Jamal Williams obviously did not have a great year last year as well. So Alvin Kamara, again, not great, but we expect this offense hopefully to be slightly better, at least slightly better under Clint Kubiak. Maybe even a lot better, but we definitely think it'll be at least slightly better, and we think there's less target competition. Kamara's going to get a massive workload. He ain't great, but he's going to be, again, a PPR cheat code.
And think about it, personnel-wise, what has really changed with this offense? Nothing.
They lost Michael Thomas. That's changed.
And that was a couple years ago. Look, he 86 targets, 75 receptions, right? Both of those numbers are only the 5th best in his career. Like, this dude is used to getting 100 targets, 80 catches with Drew Brees, right? So to have these numbers and finish as RB3 on a points per game basis, he will be, he'll be doing that again.
Can we go back to the Steven? Can we go back to the rankings page real quickly? The tier 3 rankings page here. I just want to point something out real quick here as we look at the numbers from Alvin Kamara. So look at Josh Jacobs there at number 14. These graphics were built before the news yesterday that came out, which are 2 things. Number 1, A.J. Dillon going to IR. His season is over. Unfortunately, we feel hate to see that. But also Marshawn Lloyd is currently banged up.
Yeah.
So I think the concern was that Marshawn Lloyd's going to eat into him, and A.J. Dillon's going to still get a handful of touches. And so the Packers running back room is now, at the moment, Josh Jacobs and Emmanuel Wilson. Like, that's the list. And if you look closely at the contract that Josh Jacobs signed, it's like a 4-year deal and the big money, blah, 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 blah. This is the only year that's actually guaranteed. His guaranteed money is only for this year. So I think there is a scenario, a very likely scenario, where Josh Jacobs once again gets 350 touches this year, and they ride him into the ground, Lawrence, and
Career year, baby.
I mean, just a massive, massive workload for Josh Jacobs. So I just wanted to point that out. That I think when my rankings update comes out, he'll be a little bit higher based on the news. That again, he literally now has Emmanuel Wilson's a guy.
Yeah, the Packers were a top 5 offense last year. They have a solid offensive line. He is unopposed in the backfield, and they should be in scoring position a ton. And he won the rushing title 2 years ago. We'll get to those odds for this season in the 3rd block. But let's go to Kenneth Walker, Lawrence, who a couple years ago finished 2nd in Offensive Rookie of the Year. Was defined by these massive 70-yard runs. A little bit of an underwhelming season last year, but the preseason camp hype has been huge on him. Are you buying into Kenneth Walker, or are you a bit afraid of Zach Charbonnet?
I'm still concerned about Zach Charbonnet. Kenneth Walker, only 3 times last season he played above 70% of the snaps. In those games, still he was RB20 on a points per game basis. So, like you said, he's going to give you those big runs. He'll give you the big games here and there. But Zach Charbonnet, I feel like will get more run than Tyler Algier will to Bijan Robinson. And that's where any concern would lie for me.
See, I disagree with that. I have a lot of Charbonnet this year, and I hope you're right, but I think I think you're not going to be, because everything I keep hearing out of Seattle camp, they love Ken Walker, and they're going to make him the guy, that they want him to be a bell cow here. New coaching staff, obviously, with Mike McDonald and Ryan Grubb. And so Walker, who's a nice pass catcher, they just didn't use him that way a lot, but he's been fairly efficient and good as a pass catcher when he's gotten that opportunity. I think he's a bell cow this year, and I think he's got a shot at a huge year if they commit to that workload, because he's got that kind of talent.
Yep.
If he's getting 20 touches a game, well then, I'll take that any day of the week. Yeah, for sure.
All right, another potential bell cow as we round out tier 3 is James Conner, who I don't think anyone noticed last year. When he played, he was 3rd in the NFL in rushing yards per game. People sleeping on James Conner again, Matthew.
Each of his 3 seasons in Arizona, he's finished as a top 15 running back on a points per game basis. We've got Kyler Murray, we've got Trey McBride, we've got Marvin Harrison Jr. This is going to be a better offense. No one is excited to draft James Conner. Everyone's just again, they just, it's snoozy, it's Arizona, he blah, blah, blah. But you're going to look up, he's going to have another top 15 season and not cost you that at all. He continues to be incredibly undervalued. He was on the love list for a reason. Again, it's not a sexy pick, but it is a value pick every single draft. He always goes way too late. 1 of 4 running backs over the last 3 years. There's only 4 running backs in the NFL, and he's one of them, to have at least 1,000 yards from scrimmage and at least 8 touchdowns each of the last 3 seasons.
Yep, perennially underrated. All right, the RotoWorld Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available exclusively through a new partnership with Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life. Get a Fantasy Life Plus subscription. and receive the RotoWorld Draft Guide, plus fantasy, DFS, and betting tools to help you dominate the draft all season long. Use promo code ROTO10 for 10% off. Go to NBCSports.com/fantasylife to learn more.
Whatever you play in, you can customize your ranks. You play in a 3-wide receiver with tight end premium scoring, 2 quarterbacks, like you can do that. You play point per first down. Whatever your custom scoring is, you can sync your league into it and get custom ranks for your league, and not only for the draft, but throughout the season. We spent over a year building this tool. Not we, because I'm not, but I hired really smart people, and they did it, and the tool is amazing. People just absolutely love it. It's been great to get all the notes saying, like, thank you so much. You crushed my draft for me.
Okay, we're going to hit our first break. When we come back, we'll hit running back tiers 4 and 5 and some late round targets. Clear the Shelters, NBC Universal Local's annual nationwide pet adoption and donation campaign returns for its 10th consecutive year, August 10th to September 10th. As part of the month-long campaign, NBC and Telemundo owned and affiliated stations across the US and Puerto Rico partner with animal shelters and rescue services in their communities to promote pet adoption and raise funds to support animal welfare. Got a photo here of our friend Darren Miner's pup, Ollie Fenway. Ollie Fenway was rescued from ferry flights to freedom. A big Boston fan, loves Snuggles, and Ramondre Stevenson at ADP. Sorry
Interesting.
about that, Ollie. Very good. Very good. All right, let's get into running backs tier 4. Continuing our running back primer. And one of my favorite players on earth is part of running back tier 4, Matthew. And that is Najee Harris.
Yeah.
Should we
You want
jump
to
straight
talk? Why don't you talk up Najee Harris?
No, let's do a little overview of the tier first. Aaron Jones comes in at 19, David Montgomery at 20. My man, Najee Harris, 21. Raheem Mostert, Ramondre Stevenson. DeAndre Swift, my mortal enemy, Jalen Warren. Brian Robinson Jr., and then Tony Pollard, who kind of looks healthy again, and then Zamir White at the end. Let's start off with Najee. Najee, I think the case for Najee, Matthew, is simply that he was born to play for Arthur Smith.
He really was.
Arthur Smith loves big-bodied running backs, and with Jalen Warren, who looks like he's going to be okay and may even play week 1, but Jalen Warren dealing with some soft tissue injuries, I think that Najee, even though it's not going to be super inspiring, it's not going to be super aesthetically pleasing, I do think he is going to get volume and be effective, Matthew.
Yeah. Last 2 years, under Arthur Smith, the Falcons had 500 or more running back touches. 500. Arthur Smith offenses have actually ranked top 3 in rush attempts 3 of his 4 seasons as a head coach or an offense coordinator. Remember, before Atlanta, he was in Tennessee with Derrick Henry. And so Najee Harris, who in all 3 of his years that he's played in the NFL, he's had at least 280 touches. He's had at least 1,200 yards from scrimmage. Like, again, it's not good. It is cheap volume. But given that they don't have much in the passing attack, it's going to be George Pickens and literally like Van Jefferson. I mean, no, seriously, and like Freiermuth and like it's gonna be Najee Harris and Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. Warren's a little bit banged up here as well. So Najee Harris, who very quietly was running back 23 last year in fantasy, not inspiring, running back 30 on a points per game basis. The running back 23 is because here's the other thing about Najee, doesn't get hurt. Yeah, I mean, like again, like the ultimate sort of this grinder, plotter, mutter, whatever you want to call it. Like, it is uninspiring. He's a poor man's James Conner, Jay Croucher. But I'm actually with you. I'm actually Team Najee this year.
Glad to see you.
I'm very Team Najee. And when you think about it, too, like, he can catch the ball as well. Whatever he gives you in the reception game is just a plus. 29 catches last season. He once caught 74 passes in the season. He won't do that this upcoming season. But like I said, whatever you can get in that department, you'll take it. And let's just let it be known, he is the Pittsburgh Steelers starting running back.
Yep. So, Lawrence, let's jump to Raheem Mostert, friend of the show, Raheem the Dream, put together a monster season last year. A little bit out of nowhere, was able to stay healthy, just massive touchdown count, and looks to be primed again to be a key part of Mike McDaniel's offense.
Yeah, again, here's the facts. He's their starting running back right now. And can he get double-digit touchdowns this season? Yes, that's 10. The offense is too explosive. Matter of fact, Raheem Mostert getting all his touchdowns is kind of why Tua fell a little bit in getting his fantasy points. To get near the goal line, you just run the ball in, and that's what contributed to him getting 18 rushing touchdowns last season.
Yep. All right. Anything on Raheem Mostert, Matthew? I mean, we talked about him. It just seems like someone who got 21 touchdowns last year can't be going this late in drafts.
That's the thing. It's just like it feels like I get it. He's an over 30 running back that has an extensive injury history, and we all love Devon Achane. But he's still at his current ADP. Like, okay, he's probably not scoring 18 touchdowns again, but at his current ADP, he doesn't have to.
Right.
Like, if he scores 8 to 10 this year, which is very much within the realm of possibility, like, he's a perfectly good value. I actually love this tier, right? You know, Brian Robinson's another guy. I've talked about him a lot on this show, so I won't go into it. But, like, there's a lot of guys in this tier that I think are sort of underrated that and Mostert is, I think, kind of the poster child, if you will, for, like, going too late.
Yep.
Especially, by the way, if you decide to blow off running back earlier, you only go, like, you go 1 RB or 0 RB, whatever, hero RB or 0 RB. Mostert is a really nice person to target in this range.
Yep, Denny Carter was born to draft Raheem Mostert this season.
Yep.
All right, let's close out with our running back tier 5. A couple of key names in this one that we'll jump into. Chase Brown and Zach Moss, 28-29, back-to-back in a crowded Bengals backfield with a bit of uncertainty. Javonte Williams at 31, and then Tyjae Spears, Devin Singletary, Jonathan Brooks, who's going to start the season on the PUP list, hopefully back in week 5. Austin Eckler, Ezekiel Elliott, and Gus Edwards.
Very quickly on Brooks. Again, if you don't need him to be a starter, I love Brooks because Brooks is going to get a monster workload over the second half of the season. Gus Edwards is another guy that I have a bunch of shares of this year because they are going to be so run heavy. It's going to be him and Dobbins with the Chargers as well. Ezekiel Elliott there. We have some news into the studio about the Cowboys running back situation we'll talk about in a little bit. But the first guy I want to focus on there is Javonte Williams. And again, I feel like Javonte Williams is another guy, you know, a much poorer version of James Conner, a poorer version of Najee Harris, where like early camp reports were really bad about Javonte Williams, but then recently Samaje Perine gets cut. They do have Connor Rogers' favorite Audric Estime, but it really feels like it's going to be Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin. We'll talk about McLaughlin in a second here, but Javonte Williams last year, very simply, like 200 rushes, over 45 receptions. He's one of only 8 running backs to do that. Both of his full seasons, he's had over 1,000 yards from scrimmage, over 240 touches, like 13% target share in 2023. Last year, remember, the Broncos led the NFL in running back target share, so he's a guy that can play all 3 downs, and like, he's just, I think he's somebody that's going to get, I think the Broncos offense is going to be better than people give it credit for, and he's going to be out there a lot, and he's just going dirt cheap. Like, again, not exciting, but like better than where he's going.
Yeah, also, too, you got the rookie quarterback. You have, after Cortland Sutton, as far as wide receiver goes, a lot of guys, Marvin Mims and those guys have to kind of prove themselves.
Yeah.
So you should, Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin, who, like you said, we'll talk about, I think both of those guys will be leaned on.
Yep. All right, let's jump to my beloved New York Giants and our superstar running back, Devin Singletary, who I think the best thing to be said for Devin Singletary, Matthew, is kind of that he just exists. And he's in this offense, and he's familiar with Dable's system, and it seems like he is going to be the lead guy and get work in an offense that I don't think is going to be great, but at the same time, he should be able to get the volume that overcomes that.
Yeah, he was good down the stretch for the Texans. To your point, he played for Daboll in Buffalo when Daboll was the offense coordinator there. He averaged over 200 touches and over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in Buffalo under Daboll as well. And so, look, Tyrone Tracy is there. I really like Tyrone Tracy as a second half of the year sleeper. You know, he's one of my favorite late round targets. But at the moment, Devin Singletary should get a massive workload on what should be a sort of competent offense. But again, he's not. Singletary's a good enough pass catcher that he's not coming off the field. And especially to your point, it's either the rookie Tyrone Tracy or Eric Gray, neither of whom inspire a ton of confidence this early in the season. Right. Again, I have a lot of shares of Tyrone Tracy this year. I think he's going to have a nice year. But for at least the first part of the year, Devin Singletary is going to get a ton of volume, Lawrence.
Yeah, it'll be all about the volume here, especially in an offense that we don't expect to be one of the better half of the offenses in the league. Last season, Devin Singletary only started 10 games, still ended up as running back 32 in total running back points. That is extremely good because those games that Devin Singletary didn't start, he wasn't getting a lot of touches in those games. Once he got going, you know, he showed that he could do. His second half of last season is the reason he's the Giants' starting running back right now, and that he's not in the timeshare as of yet.
Okay, let's jump to some running back sleepers and late round targets, courtesy of our friends at Applebee's. Who's eating good? I'm going to kick us off, guys. You said his name before, Matthew. Well, first of all, let's read off some other guys who are on the list. Blake Corum, Rico Dowdle, Ty Chandler, Tyler Algier, key insurance back if Bijan goes down, Jaleel McLaughlin, Chuba Hubbard, who I think is going way too late in draft.
He's going to be the starting running back until Jonathan Brooks gets back there.
By the way, which may be a competent-ish offense this season, the way that Bryce Young looked in preseason and all the reports out of Panthers
They improved the offensive line, too.
Yep, Bucky Irving, Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, and Jordan Mason, with the news that Elijah Mitchell is on IR. Jordan Mason now the clear insurance back for Christian McCaffrey, and is one moment away from being a first-round type of running back.
100%. Bucky Irving having a great camp. He's going to cut. He's one of the reasons why I'm down on Rachaad White this year. Rico Dowdle, again, I want to talk very quickly. News came in while we were taping this in terms of the Cowboys' backfield. But Dalvin Cook.
Yeah.
Dalvin Cook is back. NFL Network and Tom Pelissero reporting 4-time Pro Bowl running back Dalvin Cook is signing with the Cowboys per his agency LAA. Cook was waiting for the right opportunity and always felt it was Dallas, a marquee addition in Big D, says Pelissero. I believe he's going to start out on the practice squad. I think by marquee addition, I think he means Dalvin Cook is a famous name.
Marquis doing a lot of work there.
Marquis is doing a lot of work there.
I mean, he's a marquee.
He's a big name.
He's
not
a big name.
Big reality these days.
He looked done last year.
You think so?
I do, Lawrence. From my trained eye, he looked done.
On the Jets, he did.
Yeah.
He didn't get the opportunity, though. He ran a couple times in the playoffs against the Texans. I wonder why they didn't use. Yes, the Ravens.
He had one good run. He had one good, nice cut.
They should have used him against the Chiefs.
Yeah, Lawrence, do you think Dalvin Cook will go into the Ravens Ring of Honor? Do you think they're going to retire his jersey
For that one run?
Yeah, you think so?
It was a great 11 yards.
I'll tell you what. Obviously, it's not going to happen.
Here's my question. But does it affect how, if you were interested in Ezekiel Elliott or Rico Dowdle, who a lot of people are targeting late in drafts because, again, we expect the Cowboys offense to be pretty good, and both guys are sort of cheap volume. Now, are you suddenly out? I don't think anyone's drafting Dalvin Cook. But are you suddenly less interested in Rico Dowdle or Ezekiel Elliott because now maybe it's a three-headed monster and it becomes a little ugly? Or are you just sort of it's running back depth and I'm not worried about it. He's just a bigger name than not.
Yeah, because why are they even signing him?
I would say you had to get a third guy at some point, and this is
Their
a
third
fairly
guy,
unthreatening third guy. I think they'll be fine. I think Ezekiel.
You don't think Dalvin Cook gonna do nothing?
I don't think I think he'll be the clear third guy.
I think right.
All right, let's get to.
I would agree with there. Last thing, real quickly, Jaleel McLaughlin. I just want to mention this as well. Led the Denver Bronco in yards per carry and yards after contact per attempt. McLaughlin is somebody a late round target that I like quite a bit as well. Again, he's going to be. We talked about this. Broncos, one of the teams that lead the NFL in running back target share, and McLaughlin is their clear third down back, especially with the release of Samaje Perine. He's no longer on the Broncos.
Yeah, in similar vein, I think Audric Estime is worth a flyer in deeper leagues just because we don't really have clarity about this situation. It doesn't seem like Sean Payton is enamored of Javonte Williams. Maybe the bull case would be that he's the guy with the most pedigree and he'll get first crack at it. But Audric Estime, our friend Connor Rogers adores Audric Estime. I think there's upside there. And Lawrence, you like Justice Hill?
Justice Hill from the Ravens. Somebody's got to be the backup to Derrick Henry, a la, kind of like how Tajay Spears was last year. John Harbaugh already said Justice Hill will be a big part of the offense, and behind Justice Hill is Rasheen Ali. That's the rookie.
That's the guy I like.
That he could play. That's their three running backs on the roster right now.
Keaton Mitchell on the physically unable to perform list. We're waiting for him to come back.
So until Keaton Mitchell come back, I like Justice Hill until Keaton Mitchell comes back. I'll say that.
Okay, fantasy season just got better this season, $1 million better. Create or join a private Yahoo Fantasy League and enter the $1 million NBC sweepstakes, plus earn extra entries to win when players on your fantasy roster score a touchdown during an opening weekend game on NBC or Peacock. Download the redesigned Yahoo Fantasy app or go to NBCSports.com/fantasymillion to learn more. We're going to hit our last break. When we come back, who is the best bet to lead the NFL in rushing yards? DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns, and new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets instantly, plus get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the app and use promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours. All right, DraftKings regular season rushing yards leader. Rushing title last year, won by Christian McCaffrey. He is the favorite again at plus 275. Jonathan Taylor won this back in 2021. He is plus 600. Saquon Barkley plus 650. And we have Breece Hall, Derrick Henry, Kyren Williams, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Devin Achane, and Jameer Gibbs as flyers at 20-1 at the end. For our picks, I will kick us off. I'm taking Bijan Robinson at plus 1,200. Now, the concern is that Tyler Algier cuts into his rushing workload. There are no workhorse running backs in the NFL anymore who get 350, 370 carries a year. Christian McCaffrey led the league last year with 280 carries, that type of range. So I think that Bijan, there are worlds where he can get 60 to 65% of the Falcons' carries, get to 280, 290 carries. I think he is a generational talent who can be 5 yards per carry. And I think that Bijan, here's the key thing too. First 3 weeks for the Falcons are a bit rough in terms of the schedule. And then there is a chance in the Falcons' final 14 games that they will be favored in every single game. That is how easy the schedule is. Game script should favor him. So give me Bijan and the talent at 12-1. Who do you like?
I like that one a lot, Jay. I'm going to go with a guy who led the league in rushing before, Jonathan Taylor here at plus 600. You look at the total numbers from last year, 741, but he was hurt. You look at his last 5 games, 21 carries, 97 yards per game in his last 5 games. So that's a better predictor of what we expect from Jonathan Taylor. In those 5 games, he got 6 touchdowns. So I'm looking forward to him to bouncing back in a major way.
Very quickly, Josh Jacobs, 16-1. He's done it before. He's won the rushing yards title before. We just talked about the fact that A.J. Dillon is hurt. So is Marshawn Lloyd. It gets cold in Green Bay. So what do you want to do? You want to run the ball, especially in games that should be close. So give me Josh Jacobs at 16-1. Very quickly before we go off air, a couple of pieces of news that happened that we didn't get a chance to talk to. The Chiefs have waived Deneric Prince. So again, if you're looking for an insurance back for Isaiah Pacheco, Carson Steele has had an unbelievable camp. So just a name that you're like, wait, we've mentioned him once or twice on the show, but just Carson Steele potentially worth a late-round pick. And also the Browns released Deontay Foreman. There's some conversation that maybe it's just a little bit of roster manipulation. They're carrying 4 quarterbacks at the moment, that Foreman's likely back with them. But at the moment, it's Jerome Ford and Pierre Strong. I still prefer, if you're drafting the running back that's going to be started until the injured guy comes back, I still prefer Chuba Hubbard to Jonathan Brooks than Jerome Ford to Nick Chubb.
Yep. Right now, the Browns have 4 quarterbacks and 2 running backs.
They're trying to trade them off. That's what they're trying to do.
Yeah, I know. But no one wants to trade for Deshaun Watson. What?
Oh, boy.
All right. There you go. Listen, it's closing time, which means you can't stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Something like that. All right, we need Connor Rogers back. For Lawrence and Jay, I'm Matthew. Connor's at a Jets luncheon, by the way. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.